So I just wanted to introduce myself to you guys, let you know who I am, and then we're gonna start our lecture and start chatting about JRN. So I am a lecturer online. Well, I'm a tutor for you guys. I also lecture on campus in KZN at PMB and Durban North. Oh, someone can't hear. Can you guys just confirm for Jenna? I have a daughter. I'm married. I'm based in KZN. I have many chickens and ducks running around my garden, and dogs and bearded dragons and cats. So yeah, this is me. And I'm really looking forward to taking you guys for JRN. I've been part of VC for 14 years, so I know the work really well. And I'm really looking forward to this semester ahead. Hello to everybody. So nice to see all the chatter. And in our lectures, more than anything, I really just want us to have fun, focus on our work, make sure we get through everything. I am here to help you as much as I physically can, within reason, so that I don't end up passing out on the floor come 8 o'clock. But when you guys have got questions and stuff, you're free to WhatsApp on the WhatsApp group or privately. Just know that I am lecturing on campus 8 till 3 every day. So if I don't reply to you straight away, or if I give you a quick response, just know that it's not me being rude. It's just that I'm either in the middle of lectures or running from class to class. And because you guys are all over the world, different time zones and everything, my view is I'd rather get a message out to you as quickly as possible than wait till I have a moment to sit, because chances are then you're asleep or off work or whatever. So the reason why I do that is just to make sure everyone is able to get information as quickly as possible. All our stuff will go on, all the videos are going to go onto YouTube. They've asked to put it onto YouTube and not the OneDrive. So I have made a YouTube channel, and I've put the link in the description. I'm also going to send out an announcement, so you guys have got that link with easy access. And then everything else goes into the OneDrive. So any documents, any files, anything you need from me goes into the OneDrive. And I've already had people asking about notes and stuff. We have been told that this year to not give notes, unfortunately, so I can't put those in the file. So that's just how we're running things this year, so we just go with it. And JRN is a really interesting subject. I know you're doing it because you have to, not necessarily because you want to, but the reality is media and journalism is all around us, almost every second of every day with our social media and all our online media. So to actually have a grasp of what it is about and to actually understand what it's about is not a bad thing. So even if this is not your jam and you only are doing this because you are wanting to do psych, take it as a learning experience, because when you're working within journalism, within psych, you're dealing with people, dealing with different personalities, keeping people happy while still getting the information you need. So it's actually useful. It's a very useful subject. So just think of those kinds of things. Don't block your mind off completely to the idea of studying journalism. All right. I try to be a very chilled lecturer when things aren't intense, but make sure that we always meet our deadlines. I always make sure I'm here to support you, and just please know that questions are a good thing. Questions means you're working through the content, you're wanting to engage, you're wanting to know what's going on. So if you have questions, ask. Never ever be afraid to ask me questions, and don't ever start off a message saying this might be a dumb question or this might be a silly question. I know it's cheesy saying no questions are silly, because we know that's not true, but the chances are if you're asking that question, someone else is thinking the same thing and needing that answer as well. So there are no dumb questions when it comes to JRN, because even little nuanced things have a bigger impact later on. So rather ask. Don't ever feel like you're alone. I try to be there, like I said, as much as possible. I will support you as much as I can. And I just hope that we can have a bit of fun in class as well, chatting about the media and the world around us. And yeah, please feel free to put your mic on and have a voice and speak, because it does get boring listening to myself for an hour at a time. So please know you can 100% put your mic on and chat. Just looking at Cheryl's message. Yes, it's 2 books. Okay, so it is the 2 books that you need. It is, so the first one is about the basics of journalism, and the second book is more in depth into like the nuanced journalism, such as opinion writing and magazine writing and that kind of thing. So it does not specify which book to use. It does in the MO. So if you have a look at yeah, if, like Yolandi's saying, if you look on Learn, you will see it states exactly, it says PM1 or PM2 and then the chapters. So it does outline which sections to study. And if you look at the pacer, I'm just going to stop sharing my face with you guys. Let me show you on the pacer that I also have done for you. Guys, I did notice today a few of the links weren't working in the pacer. So I have reissued a pacer to just correct those few links that weren't working for, I think it was Unit 1, 2, and 3. So let me just show you on the pacer here. So what I've done is I've based it from this week, because I know a lot of people had issues with logging on and having issues and everything. So I based it as if you were studying from today. And you'll see here, let me get my pointer. So it's the week, what unit you should be covering, and here's the prescribed material for you as well, and which activities to complete, and then the collab date. So if you know you're battling to open Learn and you just want a document that quickly tells you what prescribed material to use, just pull this up rather than going and logging on to VC Learn and everything. Well, obviously that's important, but yeah, at the prescribed material does not state. Yeah, I'm not sure what that's about, because it does under each learning unit. So if you look in your module outline as well, it does also stipulate which chapters of which prescribed material it is. So if I just bring up the module, no, it says there. So if you have a look here, PM1. So if I zoom in my side, if you zoom in your side, here, prescribed material 1 is principles and practices. Prescribed 2 is concept to craft. So where you see PM1, they're referring to the first book. Can you guys see the pacer on my screen? Or Yuchi, are you meaning on in the OneDrive that you can't see it? I'm very sorry for pronouncing any names wrong. On the screen. Can the rest of you see it on the screen?
Yep, we can see.
Okay. So then, Yuchi, I would maybe recommend then logging out and logging back in, because then it's a disconnect your side if everyone else can see. Okay. The reason why I ask everyone, because it's yeah, I'll say I've put stuff up and then I've realized I haven't shared my screen or whatever, so I'd always just check with you guys. And guys, if I get names wrong, I'm very sorry. I'm obviously going by spelling. I am dyslexic, so sometimes I read things a bit funny, so just be aware of that. I see it as a positive rather than negative, because it means my editing is great because I know what to look out for.
That's no problem, it's no problem.
Thank you. Right. Any questions or anything you guys want for me to clarify or go over before I get into the content of Learning Unit 1 with you guys and what's important? Any questions at all? Ice tasks. Good. Okay. So let me share let me just log back into VC Learn, because it's kicked me out. Yay, cool. I'm glad. I have a thing, I hate pronouncing students' names wrong. Why don't you want to connect? But, you know, when you're not face-to-face, you can't say, no, Annie, that's wrong. Oh, yeah, and I know it says, and when, like I said, you guys, everyone calls me Annie, like I said in the announcements. So please feel free to call me Annie, because that's what I kind of respond to with students, because that's what I'm used to. When someone calls me Anwin, I feel like I'm in trouble. Yes, okay. So with regards to ICE tasks, when we will get the assignment, they said next week. We should get it by Monday. So we did ask, and they said from Monday it should be up and available. So, and then it means obviously we can work to that as well, and I will help you guys through that. So I'm just going to share my screen with you for a moment and just speak to ICE tasks. So just go here. So you'll see all my gazillion different modules that I take. All right. So if you go look under more resources over here on the left and go here to ICE activities, you will see there is a bunch of ICE tasks here. I've kind of worked it that they're the ones that I feel that are most beneficial to you guys. You'll notice there's a lot more to do with Learning Unit 6 onwards, purely because that's the practical stuff where ICE really helps you to practice your writing and helps you to practice the skills that you need. And so they're all there. They're designed to help you and offer your benefit. So you can, as long as you do 4 out of these ICE tasks, I always set more than what we need, just in case, you know, you don't really like one or the other. So this way you've got a nice variety. And then as long as 4 of them are done by a due date, which I do not have just yet, because we don't have the due date for your POE yet, I don't have the due date for ICE, but it's generally about a month before your POE is due. All right, so we're aiming for May, towards possibly the beginning of May. Okay. Yes, I'm going to touch on the POE now. Definitely getting to all that in a minute. Okay, so is everyone clear with that on ICE? That's awesome. They are quick to get through. They're not too tedious. The other ones are a little bit longer, obviously, because you know it's trying to teach you the concepts of writing, which I'll obviously go through the theoretical stuff with you guys, but your ICE tasks are there to actually help you put it into practice. All right, so how this module works is you do not have an exam, okay? How it works is that you have an assignment, ICE, and a portfolio. So your assignment is based on the first 2 learning units, so which are the theoretical sections. First 3 learning units. Sorry. So the first 3 learning units are very theory based. Kirsten, I know Underberg is ridiculous when it comes to without load shedding. So with load shedding, it's even worse. So like I said, your assignment, which they call a part, so your part is will be submitted after Learning Unit 3, so once that content has been covered, all right? And then after that, we work on your POE, which is Learning Unit 4 through 10, the practical questions. So your part will be more theoretically based, and your POE will be more practical. There will be one theory type question in your POE, but the rest is all practical. So it's what this module tries to do is find the balance between theory and practical, because it's all well and good saying you know how to write, explain how to write in an inverted pyramid, or the steps to conduct an interview, but that's not what matters at the end of the day. What matters is conducting an interview and writing using the inverted pyramid. The idea here is that you need to be able to not only read the stuff in a theoretical manner, but actually do it as well, which is super important. And I know like I say, I know the majority of you are not here to do JRN, but it is going to be amazing in learning how to different styles of writing, different ways of approaching things, and it helps you to just have a better understanding of the media environment that is around us. So just take that into consideration. All right. So again, we don't have the final date for your POE yet, but how your POE works, and it hasn't been released yet. I know I set the POE and the assignment, so I do know what's in it, but they do make changes and what have you. So I don't know if they've kept it exactly how I set the work. But what it is a whole bunch of different questions that build up to you doing some writing, doing actual journalistic writing. Awesome. This is why I love journals. It's a really diverse subject. It covers so many different things, but at the same time, it's part of our everyday life. So that's what I just hope you guys will, grasp and everything. And guys, the reality is the more you type or speak and put your mics on and whatever, obviously the more fun it is. Listening to me for an hour every 2 weeks for this is tedious. I get bored of my own voice, so I can only imagine what it's like for an outsider listening to my voice. So please just, engage and get involved as much as you can. All right. And again, ask questions.
Cool. Noted.
Thanks, Stefan. We're all shy. Don't worry. Give us another week and there'll be no shyness.
It's not being shy. It's just I don't know the correct opportunity. I don't want to interrupt the lecture.
Then what I suggest, just use the raise hand icon. This goes for everyone. If you use the raise hand icon, then I can see that you want to say something. Then I'll stop myself and you guys can talk. Is that cool?
Cool. Noted.
Okay. I'll start sending pictures of my random chickens and ducks, and it'll get you to all relax. That's what I did with last year's group, because I had a cat sleeping on me the one lecture. I was busy doing other things with others. So I'm a human being. I might be behind a computer, but I have a very crazy, wacky life, and I love it. So, the more, like I say, the more that we interact with one another, the more you guys trust me, and that way I can support you. All right. Yeah, the ducks are naughty, my word. Right. Any other questions before we look at Learning Unit 1? Has anyone been able to start working on the content?
I've completed 2 ICE tasks so far. Been reading through the work, but mainly been focusing on the other modules at the moment. I apologize.
That's no problem at all. I understand you guys are doing multiple subjects at once. I know I'm starting my studies with you this year, so I totally get the stress. Okay. So it's okay. I totally understand the overwhelming. Yes, Kirsten, I've got ducks. But that's all right. So the thing is, with the first learning units, if you have any basic understanding of South Africa, you will cope with the first learning units, all right? Because it is all about looking at journalism in the past as well as in the present. So we know that apartheid was obviously one of the most influential things within our South African history. So with that, obviously, comes a whole era when journalism was significantly influenced. So what is critically important for us or for you guys to understand with this module is we're not just looking at the past for the sake of looking at the past. All right. I know that everyone is, over talking about apartheid the same way we're over talking about COVID and the floods and the this and the that. But the thing is, we can't understand where we are now if we don't look to the past with journalism. Because a lot of people will say, but why isn't that journalist being held accountable? Or why is that publication not being like watched over, and when they say something that's a little bit taboo, shut down? All of it is because of our past, because for such a long period of our history, we didn't have the freedom to speak and speak up and, you know, let our voices be heard. So during the apartheid era, what is, when I say apartheid and I say journalism or media, what for you guys comes to mind? So what is the thing that really stands out to you or makes you, like the first words? Control. Good, Anita. Yes. Limitations of certain groups. Good. Segregation. Yeah. Kirsten, go for it.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, can hear you?
Cool. So, thinking
we've lost
something
you.
like the media that is being
Kirsten, are we
segregated
losing
to
you?
the one portion. Africa. Oh, sorry. I'll type it.
Yeah, sorry, we just keep losing you. Okay, yeah. I heard about to the one
Oh,
part
dang.
of South Africa. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm just looking at what you guys said here. Segregation, limitation, censored information, bias, propaganda, silencing. It's all exactly what you guys are saying. The media during the apartheid era was not not able to, yes, racism. Yes, good. Aaliyah, controlled narrative. Yes, good. Taylor. So that time period, during the apartheid era, was all about journalists being the channel at which the government was distributing information and spreading their particular ideals of how society should be. The media was not about freedom. Yes, a lot of brainwashing, a lot of propaganda, a lot of information being presented, which was lies and false, but being passed on as truth. Yes, exactly. Journalists being the pawns. It is happening today to a certain extent, yes. And Kirsten, you're right that certain messages weren't allowed to reach certain groups. So we had black press and we had white press. And the white newspapers designed specifically for the whites. And I'm not saying this in a racist term, guys. I'm not, it was just, black, literally black and white, or white and other. And it was that publications were designed to go into the white suburbs and the white areas that spoke to how amazing apartheid was, how calm everything is, how amazing our country is. And you can understand why a lot of people during the apartheid era didn't know what actually was going on. Because if your newspapers, which are meant to tell you the truth, are telling you that everything's fine and everything's good, you can believe it. So you can see why for some people that weren't really, looking up beyond their own borders, you can see why to them it wasn't such a bad thing. Yes, Drum and Huisgenoot were definitely publications during that time. Drum was the first black publication which was written by black people for black people. And in the beginning, it was all very like designed to just speak to the African culture and, still again promote the ways of apartheid. But then it started becoming a publication for activism, speaking out against apartheid in sly and underhanded ways. And they actually became a big part of the activism movement towards the end of apartheid. And when we look at our radio, even with radio, the radio stations that were going out to the non-white population, they were all designed to promote this view of propaganda. We're doing this to keep you safe. We're doing this because you should be with your people, which is absolute bull, of course, at the end of the day. Let me just see, Kirsten. I remember media studies mentioning that the government didn't want certain ideas. Yes, exactly. So they didn't want to promote uprising and upset or anything that meant that people were going to revolt and stand up against them. So to the point where publications were not allowed to mention any political parties other than the NP, weren't allowed mentioning anyone who was involved in any of the political parties. So there was no chance of speaking about Nelson Mandela. There was no chance about speaking about Buthelezi or Tambo or any of those people. They wanted them to have complete and utter control. All right. So I'm just pulling up the my mind today, pulling up the active learning. So just to have a look at where they wanted you to focus. So the major challenges that you guys have that you have mentioned is this oppression and censorship. What other challenges do you think journalists faced during apartheid? Why do you think it was a hard time to be a journalist? Imprisonment, yes. Very dangerous situations, yes. So, yep. Yeah, good person who couldn't report on what you wanted. Violence, police, yes, limited what and where what they could do and where they could go. Very good point. No freedom of speech. Very good, guys. So if you were a journalist and wanted to speak out against the government, you would either be blacklisted, so it meant you could no longer practice in journalism. You could be sent to jail. You could be exiled, and in some instances, killed. So it was a very dangerous environment to be in if you weren't just following the line, if you weren't just doing what government wanted you to do. And it was to the point where they had officials in the different newsrooms reading over the stories. And the journalists would write their stories, give it to the official would redact. So I don't know if you guys have seen a redacted document. So I'm just going to give you an example here. So let's say that this is the document. Just need a color, come here. Just for anyone who's not clear, they would get the document back with, for example, like this, with big lines blocking out text. So anything that they didn't want to be written or they didn't want people to see, they would redact it, they would block it out. Yeah, so I can't share the notes with you because we've just been asked not to share the notes. So unfortunately, I can't pass the notes on. Okay. So with that, with the redaction, it meant that the journalists, their voices were not getting heard, and anything they thought that was not 100% exactly what, goes with their point of reference was immediately ignored. Yes. Yeah, like Good Morning Vietnam. I'm just seeing walking on eggshells essentially to keep and grow your career. Yes, as a South African journalist, 100%. After censorship was lifted. Yes, Erin. So once censorship was lifted and once apartheid was over, they were able to go back to journalism, but a lot of them didn't do because they didn't like it or didn't enjoy it, or for those who'd been exiled, they'd have started new lives in other places. So yeah, there's that to take into consideration. Yes, all the recordings will be available on YouTube. Okay. And just look at the WhatsApp group as well, guys. All right. So yes, it was very, very difficult to be a journalist during that time period. It was dangerous. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of the Bang Bang Club. So it was a group of 4 journalists from 1990 to 1994. They went into areas that were deemed not safe for people that were white, and they documented especially the civil unrest between ANC and IFP. So there was all these key journalists during this time that were able to try and get the message across. And for those journalists, so I just want to show you guys a particular Greg Marinovich. Okay, so one of the members of the Bang Bang Club, his name is Greg Marinovich, and he is a Pulitzer Prize winning photographer. And when you walk into, there used to be, I don't know if it's still there, an apartheid museum in America, in New York. And when you walk in, this is graphic, this image. So if you don't want to see a graphic image, then please just turn your screen away for just a moment. So when you walk into the apartheid museum, you are faced with this picture here. Okay. So this was an example of one of his photos that was there to document the strife of apartheid. And him and there's another photographer by the name of Kevin Carter, Joe Silva, and there's a whole bunch. So it was these four journalists. Just want to stop sharing it in case it upsets anyone. That worked. Could anyone else see? Did it share the wrong thing?
I could see,
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
I think we were all looking at the correct thing.
Yeah, I'm assuming so. Just if you type in Greg Marinovich and whoopsie, you'll see the image there. I know, Grace, that's the really sad thing about our South African history, and a lot of people didn't know that these kinds of things were going on. They didn't know about the basically civil war that was going on during the apartheid era, and these guys documented it to the point where Kevin Carter actually killed himself in the end because he couldn't handle the strain of everything he saw and the persecution from those around him for the photographs that he took. And these guys literally put their lives on the line every single day. And I'm not trying to glamorize it or anything, but it's just that they tried to tell us what was going on, but we couldn't know. So when he took that photograph, he worked for a Joburg publication, and they said, we know your photograph is amazing, but you know we can't run it. We can't put your photo in the newspaper. It's too graphic. They will shut them down. So they would shut the publication down if they published that photo. So what they did was they sent it overseas to the States, and that's how he won the Pulitzer Prize. And that was one of the first photographs that was leaked internationally to show what was really happening in South Africa and to show the civil unrest. And that's when we started seeing things like the sanctions, and that's when we started to see the fight, because it was internationally they started to know what was truly happening in South Africa. So
Legend.
that's why, yeah, it's one of those things where who we are today as journalists is very much determined by what happened in the past. So if you think about that time period, so a lot of the old journalists now, so the journalists that are in their 50s up who experienced apartheid properly, how do you think when apartheid ended, what do you think they were going to fight for above everything else? Good. Freedom of speech. Because at the end of the day, the truth to be told. Very good. Because if we don't have freedom of speech, it means that we're not holding people accountable. So have any of you heard of the media being the fourth estate? All right, so I'm going to. So the medium, sorry to go back a bit, but isn't it a big thing in journalism that reporters get bashed on in these situations like the photo because they didn't do anything? Yes, Dominique, I will speak to that right now. Let me just explain the fourth estate. So society this is going back to like kings and queens and that, how society is determined was the kings. So the old words were kings, church, and serf. Okay. Now we say government. No, I lie. It is, yes, sorry. Kings. Yes, so it's government. Sorry, it just sounded wrong for a second there. Government, church, or I say religion, and then the everyday person. And the fourth estate is the media. And what these are the pillars of society. These are the four pillars that are meant to uphold society and hold each other accountable for doing what is right. So the media now acts as the watchdog. The media is there to watch over and hold people accountable. And during the apartheid era, they didn't have that opportunity. They weren't able to hold us accountable, to hold everyday people accountable because of censorship. Okay. But now they are able to hold people accountable. The only reason we know about Nkandla is because of the media. The only way we know about COVID was because of the media. The only way we know about Ramaphosa's money, this money being stolen from his home, is the media. So yes, the media watch over the other three pillars as well as themselves. That's what's also important, that when journalists step out of line, the journalists around them are the ones that are quickest to hold them accountable, because they fought so hard for freedom that when a journalist steps out of line and acts in an unethical manner or does something wrong, they will make sure that person is not destroyed, but that person would never ever make that mistake ever again, or kick them out of the journalistic fraternity. So it's important that journalists hold themselves accountable and everyone else. Oh my gosh, yeah. That's a whole case study for a whole lecture. My gosh, those lot. I'll give you an example. So Huffington Post, I'm sure a lot of you know who they are. We used to have Huffington Post South Africa, and we don't anymore because of two instances. The first one was that there was a journalist a freelance journalist who got a blog post, and they shared her story, and it was about how men shouldn't be allowed to vote or do anything for 20 years to make up for apartheid. And she was meant to be studying her PhD in women's studies and all of this. Turns out it was actually a journalist from Huffington Post SA who faked the whole story to prove how Huffington Post wasn't checking their stories correctly. So instead of just bringing it to the attention of the editor, they brought it to the attention of the whole country, and the editor had to resign, and a whole bunch of people got fired. There's two sides to this. Some people are saying it's good that they did that. Yeah, they said that it's good that they did it. They should be held accountable. And the rest of them are saying, well, maybe they should have just, given their boss the opportunity to fix the situation and then go for it. So, there's different views. But yes, it was spreading fake news, which is a problem. And the same they did later on, about 6 months later. They shared a video of Winnie Mandela slating a whole bunch of journalists who she believed to be working for the government, but they were very, very prominent as anti-apartheid journalists. And they didn't even let the journalists who were named in the video speak. And I mean, these are people of their own fraternity, and they didn't even do anything about it. So then they got shut down because no one trusted them anymore. So it's very sad. But Dominique, back to your question about reporters getting bashed. That's the exact reason why Kevin Carter killed himself. So I'll show you the image, because some of you will probably know the image. Let me just pull it up, because it's a very well-known image for representation of, this was in Sudan, I want to say Sudan. So let me share. So it's this picture here, this little child with the vulture. And yeah, so you can see there the image on the right. And what happened was, we've got to understand Kevin Carter as a person. He was on a lot of drugs most of the time. That was just his, that's how his coping mechanism during this time, because he saw a lot of death and a lot of stuff. And he took the picture, turned around, turned back, and the kid was gone. And when he got back, he didn't even know he'd captured this photo. He didn't remember. His friends of the Bang Bang Club, they actually said, dude, you've got this image. We need to send it in for a Pulitzer. And he got a Pulitzer. And when people were interviewing it for him, they started attacking and saying, but why didn't you help the child? Why didn't you watch where the child went? And, you know, they started to question him and his ethics. Now, the thing is, every person has the right to their own opinion in the situation of what they would do. But at the same time, what a lot of people of that time didn't realize is that when you go out onto assignment in a different country, you are told to not interfere with the people. You do not touch them. You do not engage in that way, because you might have viruses or diseases that their bodies are not used to. And you could cause more problems for these people that are already suffering. Also, this was at a feeding station, so the children and the mothers and all that were going to collect the food. So, you know, for him, he probably just thought, oh, well, the child will be with their mother. Now, again, he was as high as a kite during all this. He was not coping with the violence and the death and everything. And, you know, you can literally have an ethical debate for hours on end about what would you do. But this is what's super important to understand, guys. If any of you do go into any form of media, but even for just your everyday life, you have to do what is right for you. So there are times where journalists will step in. There was an example a few years ago in Syria when there was the gas bombs, the chemical bombs that they were launching. And one of the journalists put down their camera, ran in and grabbed a child and ran out. And everyone got the most amazing picture of this journalist saving the child. But what did the journalist get from it? Did they get the story? Did they become the story, or did they get the story that they were sent there to do? What do you guys think? Do you think by that journalist stepping in? Yeah, they didn't get the story. So everyone else profited off him and benefited from his kind actions. But at the end of the day, he did not get that shot. That meant that his publication had something to print. Again, it's dependent on you. So this is also why apartheid was such a difficult era, was because for a lot of journalists it was very difficult because it went against their whole ethical grounding and background. But there were so few jobs, they didn't want to not get paid. That is a good point, Paul. He is a human first, and we have to take that into consideration. But you guys have got to make, like I say, you've got to make that decision for yourself. I know if I saw a child hurting, I would step in. But that's probably why I didn't I didn't continue within newspaper photography and documentary stuff and that, because my heart just broke every time I was at protests or feeding centers and all that. I just couldn't cope with it anymore. So yeah, so the apartheid era was all about segregation and separation. Okay. Yeah, it is. That's why I say you can literally discuss it for hours. I have had 2-hour discussions with students in class, and I say 2 hours because we've had to stop at 2 hours because that was the end of class, and we still hadn't come to any form of conclusion. It's, you know, we deal with ethics later in our next collab, so we'll look at that a bit more in detail then. Yes, he was. That's why, and a lot of people didn't know about necklacing during that time. So that photograph held a lot of traction internationally as well, to ensure that people knew what was going on. So this is the thing, all these photos were being sent out. Yeah. And the thing is, like with Greg Marinovich, with Kevin Carter, if they hadn't taken these photos and if they hadn't shared them internationally, how long would it have taken for apartheid to end? How long would South Africa have survived without, well, sorry, not survived, carried on in this manner when they're not being sanctioned and pressure from, external sources and being isolated? This is what made the change, was that people could see firsthand what was going on in our country. The world wouldn't have moved from that point. Exactly. No, yeah, good point. No, there was no such concern as PTSD and burnout and all that. You worked to get the shot, and that's what you did until, you stopped being a photographer. And this is why so many photographers, even today, so while talking about these conditions of it being strenuous and time consuming and all that, the journalists today are still experiencing that. A friend of mine worked for New Wire 24, so Media 24's Wire publication, where they distribute their stories internationally, and they were expected to do anywhere between 8 to 12 stories a day. Yeah, exactly, Lou. So they had to write 8 to 12 stories a day, which is just insane, because it takes time to gather news and put it in the correct format and that. And then what he ended up having to do was have like a format for a crime and all that and just fill in the blanks, till the point where he got burnout and left. And it's just so sad that while we have learned about some mistakes from the past and won't repeat them, others are still continuing today. So we've only got 10 minutes left. So I just want to know from you guys, how do you feel about what do you think the journalism industry is like today? And yes, I know it's not perfect, but how do you guys do you guys read any story, like news stories? Do you read anything? Demanding, yep. Because we now work on a 24-hour news run. It's no longer a newspaper coming out in the morning and the afternoon and, your evening news and morning news broadcast on the radio. It's all the time. Yep, a lot of fake news. Yes, demanding but uncensored. Good. Yeah, I think, especially since COVID days, I'm not talking about COVID, but I think we've got so much oversaturation of news and information that we actually almost dismiss it now, because we are so overwhelmed by all the content and all the death, all the destruction, everything, all the time. Yeah, I agree with that. They do tend to side with those with power and influence. Yes, not much care to editing. Lou, the honest answer to that is, besides a handful of publications like City Press, Mail and Guardian, The Conversation Essay, the publications no longer have editors. They don't have sub-editors. They actually have cut almost every publication of your like newspapers and all that have cut their sub-editors. They expect the journalists to edit their own work, which we know does not work. The reality is we don't pick up our own mistakes. Yeah, and they don't use spell check, I know. Or they have American spell check when we're in South Africa. Yeah, unfortunately, that's something that's been going on for a long time, the lack of sub-editors. If you guys want reliable news stories that are sub-edited and really well written, look at the Conversation Essay. A friend of mine is an editor for them, and the work is exceptionally good. So I'm just going to see here, it's happening. Social media provides quick access, yes. So when someone dies or when something happens, social media tells us quickly, whether it be TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, we find out that information very, very quickly. Yeah, and it's overwhelming. My English teacher from high school made the same decision. For the world you see being a journalist is a lot to handle. Yeah, exactly. One will still be walking on eggshells while sprinting to catch the story. Yes. A lot of time really important things happen and people don't know about it because there's only so much time in the day. There's only so many stories that they can cover. A lot of misdirection, yes. Dominique, I completely agree with you. There's so many stories that speak around topics and don't actually get to the real heart of the topics. I try not to read the news as a way too depressing. I'm going to struggle with this module. Yolandi, not necessarily. You do need to kind of know what's going on in the world around you, but the way the POE is designed is that you are able to choose a style of writing that suits you and what kind of media you like to engage with. But in saying that, don't be narrow-minded. Just try and look at the bigger picture and, take in bits of media from all different genres of writing. What is considered important to the media narrative? Yes, exactly. So we'll look at the pillars of newsworthiness in a upcoming lecture, which will cover that. Okay. Nothing really shameful. You really got Stefan, yeah, go.
It's not that I ignore reading into news. In fact, I do it about a week or so, just filling myself up on what's happening around in the world. But yes, I agree that it can be quite depressing. It's quite pessimistic in how the world is painted, and it's true. A lot of what is being showed on news is, yeah, sure you get fake news. As Lou mentioned, I saw clickbait as well. But yeah, it's I can't remember where I've read about this, but it's fascinating how news, a lot of the most juiciest news that journalists chase or show nowadays is the morbid stuff, the pessimistic stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not like if you look through news, not a lot of it is wholesome. You will really find an article about something wholesome. It will always be something horrific or morbid that's going on because it's sad, but that's actually what people are after when they read the news.
Bad news sells. That is the reality.
Yes.
So that's the unfortunate reality that we are living in. But at the same time, we have so little time within society, like within our daily lives, that we don't care about the good stuff sometimes. So it's sad. Yeah, bad
Yes,
news is bad.
that is a really good way to put it. Bad news is good news to them.
Mm-hmm. 100%. So guys, what you need to remember, so when you're working through the content from now on, all right, just look at journalism not only from it's like they dyed their hair. Yeah. Just when you're working through the journey stuff now, whether you're starting to work through learning your one or moving on to learning your two or three, just think about the bigger picture. Think about the environment that we are working in. Think about how we are, you're looking at the media landscape and how the past is still influencing us today, because we don't want a situation where any of those mistakes of the past are reiterated. So what's important, and I will go through this for your assignment, or your part, sorry, what the part will be looking at is looking at the past and the present, and then also looking at ethics and that as well. So, whether you have worked through the content or working through the content, just remember the journalism industry you see today, you've got to remember where it's from. Yeah, Elia, so unfortunately, we can no longer put our notes into OneDrive, whatever, like before. We will ask that you guys take control, you guys do your own notes and everything, and then we can put slides up like I had now that we can share, but not to put those out there. Okay. The part is the assignment. Yes, sorry, it's out of habit. I call it an assignment, but it is the part. And that is due, we still got a long way away. It's only due on the 29th of April. Okay. So it's still miles and miles away. I know it will creep up on us very quickly, but it will be okay. Okay. Any questions, guys, before we log off? Sure thing. Sorry, I was meant to put them back up. I don't know. We were talking so much that I didn't put them up. Here we go. Cool. Any questions at all, guys? All good. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks so much for interacting and engaging. So excited to work with you guys. And like I said, please feel free to message me during the day or when you're working on stuff, and we'll chat to you all soon. Bye, everyone.